My name is Eliav Shalom, and I was born and raised in the heart of Jerusalem, a city where the air is thick with history and the stories of our ancestors. Growing up, I was surrounded by the sacred hills and the ancient rhythms of tradition that shaped my every step. From a young age, I was deeply immersed in the teachings of the Torah, learning its wisdom and its lessons. My faith was my compass, and my life was dedicated to following its path. Becoming a rabbi was more than just a role for me, it was my calling, my purpose. I spent my days in the study of the Torah and the Talmud, exploring the depths of our traditions and teachings. It was a life of discipline, where every moment was an opportunity to learn, reflect, and grow. My heart and mind were fully devoted to guiding my community and ensuring that the light of our faith continued to shine brightly for generations to come. For many years, I lived a quiet life, content in the knowledge that I was doing what I was meant to do. My faith gave me strength, and the wisdom of the ancient texts shaped my understanding of the world around me. I took great pride in my role, knowing that I was part of something much larger than myself. But that sense of certainty and calm was shattered one fateful day, June 15th, 2019. It was a bright summer afternoon, a time when the world felt peaceful and the sun shone warm. Little did I know that day would mark the beginning of a journey that would change everything I thought I knew about life, faith, and the very nature of existence. It was an ordinary day, yet it felt perfect in its simplicity. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden light across the city of Jerusalem. Inside my study, I sat quietly, surrounded by the books and scrolls that had been my life's work. My fingers brushed the edges of the Torah scroll before me, and it felt as if it were part of me, like an extension of my soul. Every word written on its ancient pages was familiar, comforting even. My thoughts drifted peacefully as I sat in prayer, seeking guidance for the days ahead. At home, my family was gathered together for the evening meal, a time of shared tradition and warmth. The sounds of laughter and conversation filled the air, the smell of fresh food cooking in the kitchen mixing with the evening breeze. Everything seemed to be in perfect harmony. It was one of those moments when the world feels still and everything falls into place. But in the blink of an eye, everything changed. It wasn't anything dramatic at first, just a small, seemingly insignificant moment. I had been preparing a bowl of soup for the meal when, in a split second, my hand slipped. The bowl, filled with hot liquid, tumbled from my grip, spilling its contents across the floor. Before I could even react, I saw the flames leap up from the stove. The fire quickly spread, curling up and licking the walls of the kitchen. Panic surged through me. My heart raced, and for a moment I froze. The years of training, the years of prayer and study didn't seem to matter. Fear overtook me, and I could feel my body stiffen, paralyzed by the overwhelming situation. Smoke filled the room, thick and choking. My chest tightened as I struggled to breathe, the smoke clouding my senses. I stumbled forward, trying to find my way through the haze, but with each step, the fog only seemed to grow thicker. I reached out blindly, hoping to grasp something, anything, to stop the fire, but my hands flailed in vain. Everything was happening so fast. It felt like I was caught in a nightmare where time slowed down, and yet nothing I did seemed to matter. The peaceful evening I had taken for granted just moments ago was now consumed by panic, and I had no idea what was coming next. The air around me grew thick, and a heaviness pressed down on my chest. My breath became shallow, and I could feel my heart laboring with every beat, as though it was struggling to keep going. It was in that moment of panic, as the smoke closed in around me, that I knew I couldn't fight it anymore. Every instinct in my body screamed for air, but the smoke kept choking me, each breath feeling more difficult than the last. With all the strength I had left, I tried to do what I had always done in moments of fear, to pray. I whispered the words I had known by heart for as long as I could remember. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. It was a prayer that had brought me peace countless times before, but this time it felt different. My voice barely made it past my lips, and I could feel my body beginning to surrender to the darkness. As I spoke those words, my vision began to fade. The world around me, which had once been full of colors and light, grew dimmer with every passing second. The faint flicker of the Shabbat candles, still burning in the background, was the last thing I saw, its light barely visible through the haze. For a brief moment, it seemed to dance like a final reminder of the life I had known, but even that quickly disappeared, and then, just like that, everything went black. The darkness wasn't just the absence of light. It was a profound emptiness. It wasn't like closing my eyes in sleep or even the darkness of the night. No, this was deeper, unfathomable and endless. It felt as though I was being pulled away from everything I had ever known, as if I was being dragged into a place I could not even comprehend. The warmth of the room, the presence of my family, the sound of their voices, all of it seemed to vanish, replaced by an overwhelming, suffocating void. I realized in that moment that I wasn't just losing my sight. I was being taken somewhere far beyond this world, to a place that was so distant from the life I had lived. I was no longer tethered to the familiar, and as the darkness surrounded me, I understood I had crossed over into something far greater than myself. What surrounded me in that moment was nothing like I had imagined. I had always pictured the afterlife as a peaceful, serene place, maybe even a space filled with quiet prayer or the warmth of a loving home. But instead I found myself enveloped in an immense and terrifying darkness, one that stretched out endlessly in every direction. It was so vast I couldn't even begin to comprehend its size. I couldn't see the ground beneath me, and I had no sense of whether I was standing still or falling into this endless void. It felt as though I was suspended in something that had no beginning or end. The darkness wasn't just an absence of light. It felt like it had its own life, like it was a presence that surrounded me on all sides. It was cold, unnaturally cold, and it pressed against me, suffocating me with its weight. There was no sound, no movement, just an all-consuming quiet. Time seemed to have stopped completely. I couldn't tell how long I'd been there, nor could I remember how I had arrived. It was as if time itself had no meaning anymore, as if I was outside of it, lost in a place where nothing existed but the overwhelming sensation of being swallowed up. With every passing moment, the oppressive weight of the darkness grew heavier, and I felt small, insignificant, and utterly alone. The silence was deafening, and yet, in that silence, I felt as though I was being drawn deeper into this place, as though my very soul was being pulled away from everything I had known. It was as if I had been severed from the world I had once been a part of. I could no longer feel the familiar connection to life, my loved ones, or even to myself. I realized, in that terrifying stillness, that I was in a realm that was far removed from everything I had ever known. It was a place of utter separation, and no matter how hard I tried to grasp onto anything familiar, nothing could hold me. The darkness around me was not just a place, but a force that seemed to control everything, including me. As I drifted further into the vast, empty darkness, I began to notice strange movements around me. At first, they were so subtle I could hardly be sure if they were real. But soon, I became aware of dark shapes flitting just beyond my reach. They were shadows, but they weren't like any shadows I had ever seen before. They didn't have clear, defined shapes. They shifted and moved continuously, always staying just out of view, never allowing me to fully make sense of what they were. It felt as though they were deliberately keeping their distance, circling me, but never quite coming close enough for me to truly see. What disturbed me most, however, was the sound. It wasn't like hearing voices in the traditional sense. It was more like a constant murmur, a chorus of whispers that filled my mind. The voices weren't speaking words I could understand, but their tone was unmistakable. They seemed to speak in unison, but their echo wasn't just in my ears. It reverberated inside me, unsettling every part of my soul. The more I tried to listen, the more I realized that the voices weren't trying to communicate with me. They were simply there, a reminder of something I couldn't grasp. These shadows, whatever they were, gave off an unmistakable aura of malevolence. It wasn't just that they were unsettling or eerie. It was as though they carried with them an overwhelming sense of anger, sorrow, and disappointment. It was the kind of feeling you get when you're in the presence of something that has been hurt for far too long, something that has endured unimaginable pain. And with that feeling came a terrible sense of regret, a weight that seemed to hang over everything. It wasn't just a feeling I had. It was as if the very space around me was filled with it, as if the air itself had been soaked in sorrow. Then I felt it. A pull. It was slow at first, but undeniable. Something was drawing me in, a force I couldn't resist, as if I was being tugged towards something inevitable, something I didn't want to face. The realization hit me all at once. I was being pulled deeper into this dark, anguished place, and there was no escaping what was ahead. As I struggled against the pull that seemed to be dragging me forward, my eyes caught sight of something in the distance. It was faint at first, but as I was drawn closer, I could make out the shape of massive doors looming ahead. Each door was different, each one marked with symbols I recognized from the world I had once known, symbols representing different faiths: Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism. The doors were imposing, each one larger than the last, and each hummed with an eerie vibration. The sound wasn't loud, but it was constant, like a low, unsettling hum that seemed to come from within the very door itself. It was as though the power contained inside each one was far too great to be kept hidden, and it made the air around them feel charged, almost alive. Despite the overwhelming presence of all these doors, one door stood apart from the others. It was different. In front of it was a small, simple inscription, "Children of Israel." The words seemed to glow with an otherworldly light, pulling me toward it in a way I couldn't understand. I didn't want to go, but it felt as though my very being was being forced to move step by step toward that door. No matter how much I tried to resist, no matter how hard I tried to turn my body away, my feet seemed to move on their own, as though they were no longer under my control. The closer I got to the door, the more powerful the force became. It was as if it was calling to me, beckoning me into the unknown. My heart raced and a cold dread settled over me. I could feel the weight of something terrible on the other side. And then, without warning, the door creaked open on its own, as though it had been waiting for me. The sound of the hinges turning was haunting, and as the door slowly parted, I was met with a vision of something far worse than I could have imagined, an abyss, vast and terrifying, waiting to swallow me whole. The moment I stepped through that door, I was immediately hit by an unbearable wave of heat. It wasn't just any heat, it felt like it was burning deep into my soul, suffocating me with its intensity. The air around me was thick and stifling, and every breath felt like it was searing my chest. It was a heat that seemed to have no end, a constant pressure that made every inch of me feel as though it was being consumed. The world I entered was nothing like the peaceful place I had once known. No longer was there the emptiness of darkness or the eerie quiet of the void. Instead, I was surrounded by a desolate, scorched landscape. The ground beneath me was cracked and dry, the sky above me was a fiery red, and the air was filled with the anguished cries of souls trapped in eternal torment. Their wails echoed in every direction, rising and falling like a symphony of pain, filling the space with an unbearable sense of sorrow and suffering. The souls here, trapped in this place of misery, were not unfamiliar to me. I recognized them. Some were family members I had loved, others were close friends, and some were people I had known from my community. They were all here, enduring the consequences of their actions, unable to escape the suffering that had become their fate. I watched in horror as some of them crawled across the ground, their skin charred and torn, their bodies ravaged by the flames. Others were crushed beneath massive stones, their bodies mangled and broken, as if the weight of their guilt had become too much to bear. The pain I saw in their eyes was unimaginable. I could feel the weight of their torment in every moment, a suffering so intense that it seemed to stretch beyond time itself. I wanted to help them, to ease their pain, but I was powerless. I could do nothing but watch as they writhed in agony, trapped in a place where the very air seemed to burn their souls. It was a nightmare unlike any I had ever known, and it became clear that this was the consequence of living a life disconnected from the truth. As I stood there, surrounded by endless suffering, it suddenly became clear to me. I wasn't just a witness to this place of torment. I was a part of it. The pain, the heat, the unimaginable suffering that I had seen in others now consumed me as well. My body felt as though it was being burned from the inside out, my skin cracking with each passing second. I could no longer separate myself from the agony I was witnessing. It was now my own pain too, and it was unbearable. But just as I felt the weight of despair threatening to drown me, something shifted. I heard a voice that was unlike any I had ever heard before. It wasn't the voice of a person or any being I recognized. It was far more powerful, far more profound. It was the voice of the Creator himself, speaking directly to my soul. It wasn't a sound I could hear with my ears, but a deep knowing that resonated in every fiber of my being. "This is not the end," the voice said, calm and unwavering, "but a chance to understand the consequences of your choices. Your journey has just begun. Learn from this and share what you have seen." In that moment I understood. The words echoed in my mind, and I realized the true nature of this place. It wasn't simply a place of eternal punishment. It was a realm of awakening, a place where the soul is forced to face the truths it had long ignored, the choices it had made, and the impact those choices had on others. It was as if I had been given an opportunity, not just to witness suffering, but to learn from it. I understood now that my journey wasn't over. This place, this experience was not meant to be the final chapter. It was a turning point, a moment of transformation. When I returned, I would carry the lessons I had learned from this realm with me. I would share this truth with others, so they could understand the consequences of their actions before it was too late. I had been given a purpose, a message to share, and I knew that I could not keep it to myself.